Good morning, good evening, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 22 of BDA Chat. Joining me on this week's chat, it's my favourite time of the week, the BDA Chat. Joining me this week, we've got the ever-eventful Rob, the ever-resourceful Camilla, and he's always got a word or two for us. This is David Knowles.
Hello.
This week we're going to be talking about conferences and exhibitions and festivals that we've been to, because a few of us have all been darting off and learning some insights, from industry experts. They've got some amazing news they want to talk us through. But before we get to that, there's this small thing that you may see for those that are watching the video. There's a few awards on the desk, which David is just going to take a moment just to talk about that. So David.
So we have been for the third time in 3 years amongst the shortlist, or amongst the finalists, the winners of the Great Places to Work Best Workplace award for small business. So we've gone from, in 2016, 19th place down to 11th place last year, and then 7th place this year. So
broken the top 10.
Which is brilliant. Really, really good news for us.
Yeah.
We've put a lot of work into it to make sure that we maintain it and improve upon it. So, really, really chuffed. Really chuffed for everybody in the company. Yeah.
Go team.
Go team.
Absolutely go team.
Awesome news, and congratulations to everyone that was involved at BDA in pulling that all together. Rob, I think you've got something else, a reader insight?
Yeah. So before we start, I was contacted by a listener of our podcast, following our GDPR talk a couple of weeks ago. And he had an interesting question, because he had noticed that a major football team, I'm talking a really major football team, had sent out a competition via email to all their user base. Obviously, this is pre-GDPR on the 25th of May, so they'd sent it out to all their users, and a competition. So when you went through to the webpage to enter the competition, underneath the form when you enter, they had an opt-in for other marketing materials. And his question was, are you allowed to do that? Are we allowed to kind of get people there through a competition or an incentive and then ask for their sign-in? I thought it was a really good question.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to take this on?
I can.
Go on, David. You're next on the line here. Come on.
Although I am not a legal expert and do get...
But you're dressed like one.
I know I am.
So our resident legal expert is in the house. It's Mr. David Knowles.
Yes, get proper legal advice. But my understanding of it is yes, so after the 25th of May, at the moment, yes, of course you can do that. But after the 25th of May, you won't be able to do that, because... Yes, you could run a competition, and it has to be to your opted-in subscriber list. If, however, you do run a competition and you want people to take part in it, what you can't do is have a prerequisite of their entry into that competition be that they provide their information so that you can market to them. It can't be an incentive. So you can only enter this if you give us your data. You see, so they have to be given that option to either opt in or opt out of having further marketing from said football team or any other promotion.
I'm really pleased that those days have been and gone.
Yeah, so that's how it works. That's how it works. Yes, they can do it, but you have to be able to either opt in or opt out of it. It can't be a prerequisite to enter that competition. You must give your marketing details, and you must allow us to market to you in the future.
Fantastic.
All
Mr.
right.
Stanhope, I hope that answers your question. And if there's any more, feel free to follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah, the more really questions, or even comments, or even suggestions would be absolutely awesome. So I think that brings us on to the main meat of this week's podcast, which is conference talks. Camilla and David, you've been to the D&AD.
Yes, we have.
And Rob, you've been to the Supercharged.
He doesn't look very tan today, does he? He looks a bit...
It's very bright in here today.
It is bright.
It's like a tanning salon.
It is bright. We've got some new lights, which I'm playing around.
Yes, I've been to Supercharged
2018, as it says on the board over there. So, who would like to go first with talking about each of the talks that they've been to?
Can I go first?
No.
Oh, Lee.
I'm wearing my doctor's shirt. Come on.
The doctor's
Doctor
in the house. Dr. Camilla.
Surgery is open.
All right. It was a bad choice today. So David and I went to D&AD Festival last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. David came to the first day with me.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant. So it was a bit exhausting because there's a lot to take in, but I thought it was really, really good. And I've been to other big conferences, I won't name them, but I've been to other big conferences. Do you know what? It can be so expensive, and the tickets cost a lot of money, and the value that you take out of it sometimes can be, you know, some of these things are just so big that you lose a little bit of the essence of learning some really good stuff. And I really felt that this year D&AD was brilliant, and there was lots of talks that were really good, and it wasn't fluffy, there was no buzzwords, and it was really cool. We had Dave Trott.
Yeah, he was great on the first day.
He was great.
He saved it for me on the first day.
He wrote
A
Creative
creative
Mischief,
book, yes.
which is quite old now, but he's written several books. Creative Mischief being one of, you know, the top ones. But he did a little talk. I don't know if you wanted to mention that, David, around.
Yeah, because I was only there for one day,
Yeah.
and
Did you get thrown out?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
Almost wasn't let in, but
Took a while, didn't it?
took a while.
Did you go to the? Was it a wrong solicitors concert? Festival we turned up to.
No, it just took a long time to get in. Anyway, yeah, he was right at the end of the day, but he was great.
Yeah.
It's like old school advertising. This is how we used to do it in the 80s, basically, 80s and 90s, and it was great. You know, he talked about cigarette advertising, advertising beer. How Docklands, how they promoted Docklands, and it was about being mischievous, and he talks about things like weasels, so sneaky stuff to make your ads run, basically, wasn't it?
Even if they got turned off, that was press, you know, and then the next day they put something else up.
Yeah,
Weasels.
absolutely. You know, and it was his main thrust of what he spoke about was how to get ads run. When
You always use that word, sorry.
thrust.
Yes, thrust.
Sorry, David, go on.
The main focus
Yeah.
of his presentation was how to get your promotion, your advertising run.
Sorry.
when
Got the giggles, haven't we? Should we just
You
take a
do.
second?
I'm just pitching that being the word of the week. Sorry, go on.
when you've perhaps been told you couldn't. So it was twisting things, like how BA twisted the wording of being the 5th largest airline at the time from, we can't say we're the 5th largest, but we can say
We service the most countries.
absolutely.
Because they've had the most
so
flights.
we're the world's favourite airline.
Yeah, because more than it's quite
So a bit like what we saw with Rory Sutherland that time. You can't always change the reality, but you can
Perception.
change the perception.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
readers or listeners will take what they will from it, and
Yeah.
they make their own decision and their own perception from what they've read.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
really
that's interesting.
There
I
were
like
some
that.
really interesting things in there that he said. So yeah, I found him. Yeah, he was fascinating. He was down to earth
Yeah,
and just said it how
he
it
was,
was,
wasn't he?
wasn't he?
Yeah, F-bombed a lot.
Yeah.
I bet he had a nice voice though, and he could get away with it.
No, he's Cockney.
Okay, wow,
Yeah,
that's daring.
I quite like the Cockney accent.
Yeah, I did as well. But what else did you see?
So yeah, David, that was on the first day, and then I was a bit spoilt because day 2 and 3 were really, really good. So we had a chap called Jeff Goodby. So he's the chair of Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. So they're huge. They do big ads. They're based over in the US.
Yeah.
He's got giggles. I don't know why. Got Marsha Meredith. She is the creative director for Aesop, which is a skincare brand. I love Aesop, but she was brilliant. And then Territory Studios, and you would have loved this one, Lee. It's the guy behind Blade Runner.
Blade Runner 2049.
So yeah, and it was the guy behind the creative and the look and feel.
Oh, that's
Blade
awesome.
Runner. Lee would have just been like, watching it.
'Cause
It's just a different way of. Apparently, and I thought this is really cool. They were given the brief, but they had to go into this room. They invited to read the brief. The brief was in this room, one copy. They had 20 minutes to read the brief, digest it, and leave. They couldn't take the brief with them because it's all so top secret.
Yeah.
And then go away and come up with some ideas, and then come back and then they got the script. So then started to work with the costume department, all these other departments to kind of paint this research kind of picture of what should this film look like, what kind of influences should we take. So whether it's getting a piece of fruit, zooming in on your camera, taking a picture, projecting it on the wall, sketching that, and it was literally about how you manipulate to create a vision of what that film will look like in 2048. It was so clever, but really back to basics. I think you would have loved it. It was just kind of playing around with stuff. So they were really cool.
That's awesome. Having
This is
seen that
good.
film and not getting caught up, but the visual direction, the cinematography on it is quite amazing. It's gritty, but it's this dystopian sort of future, which is just quite amazing when you watch it. I didn't see it on the big screen, but that must have been really interesting.
It was
What was the
good.
main takeaway for you then?
I had a few. There were a few words that kind of got battered about. Community was one. So they spoke a lot about true community of a company. So Aesop, which is skincare, very beautiful brand, very delicate brand.
Quite organic kind of feel to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and their stores are beautifully done. they took, instead of like influencers that they'd use in their community, like, I don't know, other skincare professionals, they took artists, musicians, architects, just things of beauty, and worked with them. So they had an artist that created some artwork based on the ingredients within a bottle to create this piece of art that then got put inside the perfume bottles and then was on their website. And then, so it's just how you use different kind of communities. I thought that was really cool, but the woman, Meredith, was brilliant. Spirit as well. They talked about culture within a company, whether that's within an agency or within a company. You know, it's about having that good spirit, that good community within your company, and really working on that, because it does shine through in the work that you produce, rather than being fake and trying to produce something that isn't actually real or isn't the purpose of your brand. They spoke about purpose a lot as well. So what's the true purpose of what you're trying to do? And if you do a video about that true purpose, or then I hate that word, but it means a lot more to people. Consumers will see something as fake and it's not really what you're about. And if they see through that, we all know it. We look at something and go, you know, if it's not about your true purpose, it doesn't really land very well with them. So that was mentioned quite a lot as well, which I thought was really interesting. So spirit, purpose, community, and also creativity. So just about creating something that stands out and is a bit different. They spoke a lot, because obviously it's about creativity and kind of design and advertising those 3 days. But I was really chuffed with it. I thought it was some really good stuff by some people who are so good in the industry. So it just leaves you feeling really enthused and passionate and kind of bouncing back to the office. So
yeah, I'm disappointed I couldn't be there for the other 2 days.
Yeah, really cool stuff.
I'm disappointed I couldn't be there for Blade.
There is actually links to the live blogs that they were doing, so there's some kind of streaming. So we'll put that. I'll share that in the description on YouTube.
I think that'd be cool.
In Blade Runner, there's a little bit of it. I discovered this from a podcast. I think the way they've just. Have you seen Blade Runner 2049?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, you know, it always looked like there's ash coming down, because they're basically suggesting that the atmosphere is pretty much it's
gritty
and bad. The reason it does that is just because the director lives in Canada and he loves snow. So much so that he goes, let's just make it snow. But they couldn't make it snow, so he goes, we'll do this instead. So
that's so funny. He spoke about that, and he said we want the feeling as well to be really oppressive and really kind of like you look around the world that they're in, and it's gritty and it's a bit crap. Like you don't want to be there. It's that kind of
it did give you that feeling. They really conveyed that in that film.
Heaviness.
So do you have a top 3 talks that you? Or was it,
I think those ones that I mentioned, the Dave Trott one that David saw with me was great. The lady, the creative director from ASOP, was brilliant. And that Jeff Goodby, because he's just a little bit of a god over in the US. They do some good stuff for the, what's it called? The big event, Super Bowl. They do some really awesome stuff. So we're talking like big advertising budgets. So it's stuff you watch and
mega.
It blows your mind when you watch it. But yeah, they were great.
Speaking of blowing your mind, let's hand over to Mr. Robert Jarvis, who's been to Supercharged. No, it is not yet. Supercharged 2018.
Yes. So this is a conference run by Marketing Weekly, supported by eConsultancy. And this conference down in London, it was down at County Hall, which is beautiful. It's right on the Thames, overlooking Westminster, London Eye, the works. A real beautiful setting for it. But it was all about marketing powered by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and emerging tech. So really kind of like looking forward to the future, kind of we're at that tipping point again now with a lot of tech.
What was the top tech that you saw? Did they have any tech there?
No, surprisingly not. All the talks was just literally about quite futurist concepts around artificial technology. So really didn't get our hands on any tech, not quite as much tech as we have here for our events with things. But no, it was more just listening to some of the thoughts and opinions and then being able to walk away and cast our own. And do you know what? It came at a really apt time for us at BDA because I think we're in the middle of realising a dream about this innovation hub that we've had for a while now, and it's starting to come to fruition, kind of powered by our R&D strategy. So again, some of the topics they were talking about are very much topics that we're looking at and we're investing time into.
So which were they, just out of interest?
Which are what? Sorry, the topics. So
So
artificial intelligence, so deep learning, machine learning. There was a big part on chatbots, which I'll come on to in a sec, which is really interesting, the uses for those and how much that's growing. So just various elements, lots about really expanding your reach, being able to process and a massive amount of data with everything that's going on now. Everything's talking back and processing data. So it's becoming humanly impossible to actually process that data. So it's all elements like that. So there were some really good bits. I think the first thing I picked up was this talk about hyper connectivity. And this is basically what we were talking about the other week. Everyone is always on. Those demands, expectations are changing because we expect stuff now. We don't want to wait, and that's changing the whole landscape. And the way a lot of companies are coping with this is artificial intelligence. So there was a few examples that they give. So one example was literally how IBM Watson. So this is, the machine learning. This is the artificial intelligence that's powering so much that IBM have developed. You work with a client to literally make sure that they were collecting profile information about individuals enough to build up such detailed segments that they could do highly personalized, highly targeted to certain demographics. Now, it doesn't sound that amazing, but if you watch the video, I think it's called Jack's Waffle, and IBM Watson. If you Google it, again, it explains how it can be used to you've got a very smiley face today, to kind of process all that data. So that was interesting. Another thing that came out, like Netflix claims to have saved $1 billion using artificial intelligence.
How?
That's a good question.
You're waiting for someone to ask that, were
They
you?
don't use any artificial intelligence.
Well, loads. Loads. So constantly it's collecting data about usage, etc. Just bang my mic. So it's building up constant profiles of people, of individuals. Like so it can detect moods almost now. So it knows what moods people are in at certain days of the week, at certain times, in certain locations. So it's able to recommend films in your viewing list that may match your views.
Played the same stuff. 96%. Everything's always 96%. I don't know where they get the 90 number from.
No, and they take it a step further. Do you know, based on some of your viewing habits and your preferences, they change the covers of the films?
I noticed the covers change,
yeah,
but I didn't realise it was based on...
Yeah, so again, algorithms and artificial intelligence is powering this, going display this cover to this market segment. I didn't see any evidence of it, but these were very trustworthy.
I noticed the change, but I'm not doubting it.
What I'll do is when I get home, I'll take a snapshot of some stuff that I watch on Netflix.
Send it
you
to
take
me.
the stuff and we'll see if it's changed.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting. So Netflix claim. Then there was a big discussion on chatbots. So Royal Bank of Scotland were there. They were talking about how to aid their banking. They've using artificial intelligence to create chatbots to handle a lot of those frequently asked questions, such as I've lost my card. So again, this chatbot using deep learning and artificial intelligence is clever enough to respond, but also it's clever enough now to respond with sentiment and tone of voice. So basically, if you've lost your card, they know, well, people can be quite stressed. So the first thing the bot does is reassure you, it's okay, we can sort this out. So there's all of that. So they've said basically what that's allowed them to do is support more of their customers quicker, and take the load off of real human resourcing in the business to focus elsewhere. And Age UK also talked about their chatbot, which does very similar but on a smaller budget, and it was amazing really what they had achieved in helping some of those inquiries.
Age UK?
Age UK.
I wouldn't imagine they would have what a lot of chatbots. I wouldn't imagine that generation would.
No, and that's one of the other thing. They did a lot of user testing because obviously there's interfaces and stuff that this older generation have to use who are going there. But quite often it's the daughter, the son who's looking it up. Yeah, the carer. So again, they're more used to these natural sort of interfaces and being able to just quite talk instant access rather than having to go through lots of procedures.
It does disappoint me a little bit, and I always think that a chatbot I'm actually speaking to a real person. But in actual fact, I'm speaking to a robot.
Yeah. And do you know what? You should be honest about that, I think. And this was one of the discussions yesterday was if your company is going to use a bot, which they reckon literally by 2020, 85% of customer interactions will be bot driven in the first instance. This is what they're predicting. That's only 2 years away. But be open about it. Don't try and make it pretend to be a human.
Yeah. You always get the name. Hi, my name's
Yeah.
Adam. I'm here to help. And then you just...
You feel betrayed if it's actually not a real person. You'll be like...
Well, you would never know, I guess, would you? If it's got all this sentiment and emotion, that maybe.
Unless if they do it really well, you wouldn't know. No. If it fell down, you'd get angry with.
Yeah, and also Age UK, it looks for trigger words. So if there's a word like theft or something like that, it literally pings up and brings a human into it. Because obviously this is a serious matter. I can't remember the other thing, but theft is like a trigger word. There was something else which literally gets them straight into a human, which again is a nice touch, and it's something that they've developed over time. Right. Another interesting one. We all love IKEA, don't we? We do love other brands as well, Lee. I think that's a bit usually so.
Other furniture brands are available.
Yeah, and I've got to look at his name. It's Bas van der Poel.
I love the accent.
Apologies for any misinterpretation or miswording or mispronunciation of the actual name there.
And he is the creative strategist of Space 10. Now, Space 10 is IKEA's innovation hub.
Right.
So really
Yeah, that's
interested
very
to
cool.
kind of hear from this guy. And he was quite cool, laid back, sort of, you can imagine, futurist, innovative developer sort. And he was saying the interesting thing is we used to have to learn the computer's language to work with computers, to talk to computers back in the day. Now it's the job of the computer to learn human language, so we can better kind of service the needs of our users. I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah. And he also picked up on natural interfaces. And for anyone who doesn't know what a natural interface is, forget your standard user interfaces. These are spoken, so voice search, for instance. He gave some great examples. So, of course, you've got your Alexas, your Siris that you talk to, and it's very natural. You don't have to click on things or do this. Also, Amazon Go was another good example. Retail is becoming almost a natural interface as well. You walk in, you select your goods in Amazon Go, you walk out the shop. So again, that was quite interesting. And there's a massive growth there. And even Google investing in gesture-based maps. I think it's called Project Soli. And they have a little hover and you can do this and that, and it changes the volume without touching anything. So again, just some examples of how people are starting to demand natural user interfaces. And that's why it's opened up to different generations as well, because you have the tech-ready generation like we discussed last week, but also older generations don't need to know how to use things. It's more human-based.
Well, I think they've gone through that curve where, here's all this natural user interface in user, but for a while it didn't work, and it just became frustrating.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think it's turned around, and now it's become...
Definitely.
And I think then going back to last week, given the younger generation just being brought up with some of these natural user interfaces, they're going to expect it to be everything to be able to do it.
Yeah,
Aren't
completely.
they? Talk to anything, swipe.
Yeah, and it started
do
with the
whatever.
touch screens. It started really with the iPad, and
Yeah.
it's the most natural interaction, touching and swiping and scrolling like that. But it's going even further now by just purely not having to make contact, gesture-based, voice-based, and it makes it even easier. So that was really interesting hearing for him. And the most debated part of yesterday, and probably the last bit I probably want to kind of finish up on, is bias in artificial intelligence, because it's throwing up ethical questions here. And I think one of the examples that I heard and got us all talking was autonomous cars. So they're powered by artificial intelligence. But what if that car, the AI, has to make a decision? Do I hit the pedestrian or do I crash the car off a cliff and kill the people in the car? We're leaving that in the hands of computers. So again, this threw up lots of debates. I think even Mercedes came out and said something about it would always protect its customers, which I don't think went down too well. This wasn't at the event, this was post in the media. But again, it's like people who are programming the AI are the IBMs, the Microsofts of this world, the Apples, and it's quite a small demographic. And are we literally are we bringing those biases, those social biases, to our artificial intelligence? And they gave some examples that I'm not going to give today, but some really compelling examples of actually how AI could be racist and has been sexist, and that's a concern. The big talk was, how do we democratize AI for the future, rather than just small pockets of people developing it, having a more open forum. So again, that was a really good debate, and even in the office this morning, I brought that back in, and people were debating it. There's some really good points in there. So again, AI is exciting. It's going to allow businesses to do more. It's going to be able to scale up.
Sorry, I got the giggles.
And yeah, it's an exciting time.
It was really interesting.
It was really interesting, and yeah, it's very AI focused. I've spoken about there, but they were some of the key topics.
Really interesting.
Lovely stuff.
Good
Well done,
stuff.
Rob. I think, an excellent episode of people being away, having all these chit chats and learning loads of insightful, developing, exciting times.
Absolutely.
I've just been working on our YouTube channel, which I've got some really exciting things coming up. So as soon as I've filmed them and done them, you'll see them. So I think that wraps it up. Does anybody want to add anything to this week? Is there anything else we need to mention?
I don't think so.
He leant in there like he was going to say yes.
No, I don't have anything.
I don't think there's
I
anything
don't
else.
have
we-
anything.
I've
I've got nothing.
Well, that, of course, as much as we don't want to do it. It leaves us with David's. And I know we keep going back to him, but
He's wearing a waistcoat.
it's
fine.
David's very formal
He's very formal today.
word of the week.
Because it caused such hilarity.
David.
I'm
David.
just
Just say
thrust.
Oh.
We've got a thrust.
Is that it?
Yeah, no,
I can give you some
You
rationale
can give us some more
behind
thrust. He's going to get his thrust
Just
out.
keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. And on that note, that's us. Done. We're going to move forward. We're going to move forward on out. Thank you ever so much for everyone joining us this week and for you guys out there. Please reach out and contact us on our social channels on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. That's us done this week. We shall see you all next week. We're all off to go and watch Avengers again. Peace out. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.